Hey, Paul Morrow here. We're back with Smart Financial Lifestyles, doing some interviews about superstar grandparents, and especially in this particular case, we have a superstar grandparent who is also one of the superstar professionals on the team that's necessary to make some of these financial affairs go properly. So I want to welcome to the podcast attorney and friend Lou Sorgi.
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Great.
So we're going to talk about a few things, and we'll get into all kinds of great professional things. But I thought one of the funniest stories I ever heard is that when you went on a vacation to Italy, you even found out your extensive relatives that you didn't even know are lawyers.
Yeah, it was actually kind of ridiculous because my father had gone to Palermo and said he couldn't find any relatives, and so when I took my wife and I, Anna, who's also a lawyer, to Italy. To Sicily, we went to Palermo, and I had received some information regarding a relative in Palermo, so I looked him up. And as it turns out, he's a lawyer.
This is funny because, by the way, Lou's a lawyer, his wife's a lawyer, his daughters and son, I mean, they're all lawyers in this family. It's like there's something in the water. But
Yeah.
I thought that was very cute. Even, that's what you call extended connections, folks. When you have an attorney and he says, I have a lawyer in Palermo, Sicily, now that's connections.
Yeah, and his father was a judge.
And his father was the judge.
And his grandfather owned the pasta and pastry shop in Palermo with a big sign right in Palermo, and my father must have been standing under it and never saw it.
Okay, that's cute. So from the personal sort of standpoint, I mean, you'll gather if you watch this video or any of our other videos over the years, Lou and I have known each other a long time, done a lot of financial and estate plans, seen a lot of things which we'll sort of kick around a little bit. But it is true what he mentioned in passing. We don't have his wife Anna with us today because Anna is executing some of her skills in the other part of their life, which is the superstar grandparenting. So, Lou, how many grandchildren
5.
do you have? 5. So, there was a very famous person who said, don't take advice on how to make $1 million from someone who never made $1 million. Well, I would say the same thing probably applies to grandparenting. Robert, probably you shouldn't take grandparenting advice from somebody who hasn't done it a lot, right?
I would agree.
Yeah, and sort of tiptoe to the raindrops. I mean, you and Anna have sort of wound your way through, raising children, right? Seeing them get married, getting them through college, and now you're working on the grandparenting thing. So you have what I would call a pretty deep experience in why we do financial and estate planning, right?
Yeah.
Because you really don't do it unless you like somebody. So tell me, of the children that you have, so your son's a lawyer, and your daughter's a lawyer, and your daughter-in-law's a lawyer. Is there any hope that some of these grandchildren of yours will also become lawyers?
Probably not, unless I have something to do with it. But they seem to be more in the technical world, even the little ones.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I
think that's the internet.
That's the story of our future. They're going to be more technical than us.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. So, Lou, you're super lucky, too. So, in our podcast, we've talked about grandparenting and what happens with some people when the kids come along. And a lot of it has to do with geography. And if I get it right, all your kids and grandkids are literally within a stone's throw of where you live.
Yeah, they're within 20 miles.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I actually just met my nephew Vinny's daughter from Ventura, California, and my poor brother Bill has been flying back and forth 3,000 miles back and forth to see his first grandchild. I mean, that it sounds easy, but 3,000 mile flight, I mean, it's really not easy.
Yeah, well, there's two parts to good grandparenting. There's the grandparenting from the availability point of view, where you are there to be for your kids, supporting them by helping them with the grandchildren actually. And then there's the financial grandparenting part, which you can do even if your grandchildren are in other parts of the country, supporting your kids to help them with their grandchildren, because today the financial aspect of children is brutal, and so you can do that wherever you are. You don't have to be 10 miles away.
Yeah, I think part of the financial grandparenting book touches on the three big stresses that we run across, which is helping your kids with, housing, education, right? And I mean, childcare is huge. Now, I think you and Anna help out with some actual childcare since some of the babies have come along, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, we hit two of those three because one, which actually becomes into a planning perspective too down the road, but one of my grandsons has to go to a special school which requires special pickup and drop off. So physically, we have to go help get him, number one. Number two, it also costs money for him to go there, even though the town pays some of it. So we have to plan for that and help doing that. And thirdly, he's going to need help down the road.
Actual physically grandparenting, not just doing the financial parts and helping out with the stresses of cost of childcare, cost of education, cost of getting into their first house. Lou, you were talking about how you and Anna kind of arranged to even literally drop off and pick up at school.
Yeah, we have to help Andrea, our daughter, who's also a lawyer in our group, with her son because he goes to a special school, as I said, and he needs to be picked up and dropped off, and that's different than my granddaughter who goes to a different school. So we have to support that. That living nearby helps that. But we also have to help financially in terms of not so much the money part, but the planning part, because future down the road, he's going to need help with college and planning for college. And so we've also set up a financial plan that will help our daughter and my grandson through his, early times to get out of the college type of area.
So Lou, we met years ago, and I've been sort of observing as you work with our clients over the years. So did you get the sort of financial management gene handed down from your mom and dad? Like, I think, if I recall, your dad was like a very successful, hardworking guy in the pharmaceutical industry. Did you sort of get that gene to get well planned out and always have like a ribbon on everything, financial, legal, all tied up? Is that an inherited thing you got?
I would say no. We're a medical family, and my dad was in the pharmaceutical business, and my brother's a doctor, and my sister's a nurse. And I would say my dad's financial planning, I saw him get help from a financial advisor. So I know that that's how it was done, but he never shared with me how to do it. I learned from getting into the law business and learning about the physical legal part of planning. And then by my association with Paul, I've learned the financial planning part of how it works. Well, kudos to you. Yeah. With how it works with the legal part, because it's a team approach, and so I have learned that. Nobody gave it to me other than what I learned when I was with Paul.
Yeah, I have to say, I think some families just get it. Their parents are well planned out, and they get well planned out, and they get their kids well planned. And for other families, they have to sort of learn the whole thing.
Yeah.
Lou and I had an incredible experience, a learning experience. We met years ago, and I'll just tell the story briefly because it was the story of financial and estate planning really sync together to make things work, because many of the legal plans essentially look like sort of an empty vessel. It's sort of like it's a bucket that isn't full of anything, and it's got to be filled with money and assets and insurance and houses and all this kind of stuff. And Lou and his family, which is a great family-oriented law firm, is great at putting together legal things for people with disabilities and other problems. And we met because a particular family in Massachusetts was going through a retirement planning scenario, and we created some legal documents, and then we put some insurance inside the legal documents. And tragically, I'm trying to remember, Lou, now we're getting so old, I don't even think a year went by before that person was walking their dog and got killed by a drunk driver or something.
Correct. Yep. The classic case where the gentleman said he had a disabled child and he had retired, and he said, I need to do this just in the event that what happens if I get hit by a car when I walk out the door?
Literally, it's like you read about what happens if I get hit by a car.
And he got hit by a car, and if he hadn't done proper planning, both from the legal perspective, in other words, documents to take care of his son and daughter, by the way, along with Paul setting up the proper financial tool that went to the planning documents, they would not have been set up, and that we were very fortunate to do it. Paul and I learned together. That was over 20 years ago.
Yeah, over 20 years ago. And it was one of those shocking things. I have to say, in our industry, like, it may sound like every person who's in the financial industry and every person in the legal industry wants to tell you that they're deeply experienced and they know how to do everything because they read it in a book. Now, I will tell you, a lot of the things that you learn in this industry are the practical knowledge of how stuff really works out. And for Lou and I, the reason we become like deep advocates of integrated planning with a team, and every single book, if you're fortunate enough to get one of our book copies, I encourage you to attend one of our meetings. You get them for free. Go on Amazon, download them, the ebook. In every single book, there's a chapter on building your financial management team, which includes your lawyer and your investment advisor and your insurance professional and your tax. Because if you don't put it together, we have seen some tremendous cracks that things fall through. I mean, some really messy things. So your dad was successful, and your family was a great family, all medical professionals. But you really took the bait on being like a super, not just a lawyer doing house closings, which your firm does all that. They do real estate, disability, but also you're like in the integrated estate planning sort of field.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. We in my group, which is basically three of us, my daughter and my daughter-in-law and me, really like working in a team approach, and I like seeing the effect of it. I do not want to be in a position where I prepare with a client a bunch of documents, hand them to them and say, thank you very much. I like to see how they work. I want to make sure they work, because my work isn't really valuable unless somebody else uses it. And that's really what we do, and that's the big hole in our business, is people on both sides of the coin, they don't integrate it, and so it never meshes, and there's always a hole in the middle. And we, in the 20 years that we've been doing this or more, we've seen that hole.
Oh, we just had one. Lou and I just met with the family of a deceased client, wonderful woman, known for many years, whatever, who used a lawyer who paid to have some legal work done and whatever. And as it turns out, post-mortem, after the fact, we find out properties weren't held in trust and real estate wasn't. I mean, it was really a tragically heartbreaking thing for the kids, because their mom was a pretty serious person, to the extent where we had sat down, wrote checks to the lawyer, did all kind of stuff, and it just didn't get done. For whatever reason. It didn't get done. And the result of something not getting complete is very messy. So Louis, also, I have to say, a lot of changes are going on in the United States today, and I'm sure you're well aware of this. And we're filming this particular interview in July 2025 after the recent passage of a bill that's going to change a lot of our lives in many different ways. And Lou, for many years, there was a business dedicated specifically to what was called Medicaid planning, that is getting people qualified to go on to Medicaid, not Medicare, but Medicaid, so that they would get a large portion of their nursing home bills, their bills inside a nursing home living there, paid for. I think it's going to change materially. What do you think about this?
I definitely think that. I've been thinking about that all along, because that's an area that we work on. All the Medicaid planning in the world and all the trust work and whatever you do to plan so that you can qualify may not be worth anything if there's no funding at the other end.
No Medicaid money.
Right. Exactly. So what's going to happen, I think, and I don't know that, but I'm hoping it doesn't, is that it's going to work one of two ways. One, they're going to make the availability of money less, so that even if you planned, you wouldn't qualify because the money isn't there. And the other thing is they're going to make the qualifications more stringent so you don't qualify. So you can cut down the usage of the Medicaid funding for nursing home planning by making the application more stringent, which means what I do and what Paul plays into in his group needs to change, and you need to think about it, because I don't know what those changes are going to be, to be perfectly honest, but I think they're going to make it more stringent.
Yeah, I think I actually just recorded a YouTube broadcast about the new bill. I think there's 3 or 4 things in this bill that are germane to our topic today. There's some very good things in there for people in business. I have to say, if you were to look at this from a business owner standpoint, there's some very good things in there for self-employed people, pass-through entities, depreciate, a lot of good stuff.
Sure.
On the flip side of this, for our elderly clients, I mean, we had actually one of our mutual clients, told by the nursing home facility where her husband is residing that they're on such a thin budget. And we've had nursing home owners as clients. I know that nursing homes are on a thin budget, and 65% of their revenue comes from Medicaid reimbursements. That means there's only 35% of the people in there actually writing a check to pay the bill. So it's going to affect even the private payers, because they told her that if the cuts to Medicaid were significant, they would most likely notify their patients they couldn't stay in business anymore. Because it's just like in your home budget. If you took 65% of your budget and you cut it down by half, I mean, you would have some budgetary issues.
Sure.
So that's effect number one. The second one, I think, is going to be quite a big business opportunity, which, of course, it's like roofers after a hurricane. There's going to be good people and bad people. I think there's going to be a rush for paperwork assistance, because just to give you an example, we're in the Medicare business as well, and in order to qualify for Medicare, if you're a duly qualified person, that's a Medicare, Medicaid person, a duly qualified person, there's now 15 pages of paperwork. So I think, again, whether that's intentional or not, I don't want to be too overly cynical, but for a senior citizen to get through 15 pages of paper, to get on a DSNP plan, a duly qualified plan, I think there's going to be people that are going to be offering to do that paperwork for a fee, maybe a small fee, maybe a large fee. I mean, we have seen some very substantial fees just for Medicaid qualifying paperwork.
Right. Well, it's 40 pages.
Yeah, and this is going to go into that world. This is going to drop right into that world.
Oh, yeah.
So I do think one of the results is going to be bureaucratic disenrollment. I think bureaucratic disenrollment, folks, simply means you can't get through the bureaucracy, even though you might be qualified, but you have to do certain steps and sign certain papers.
Sure.
and get yourself through. So, Louis, what you think about this with your kids and your grandkids, and I know you and Anna have done a lot of planning. I mean, I think that the thought that the government is going to help pay a lot of people's bills in the future is probably turning into a pipe dream. I mean, I think society's changing on that.
I agree.
And so, like, we're very, very concerned about everybody doing great planning, but also not depending so much on this. There is a sort of a fantasy that if you do a few pieces of paper, the government pays all your bills.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the areas that's going to change. I think they're going to look much more strictly at your ability to pay, notwithstanding the paperwork that you used to do to avoid it.
Yeah.
And it's going to go back perhaps to what Medicaid used to be, which was to assist our fellow citizens who don't have the means to take care of themselves, not those that have the means to avoid it.
Yeah.
And
right. Wow, really well said. So what
Yeah.
Louis just said, which is the truth, is that Medicaid, AID, can probably survive to serve its original purpose of just helping financially needy people, regardless of age, and Medicaid as a tool for the moderately successful affluent person to hide their money and get the rest of the population to pay the bill will probably be tougher. You can make your own value judgment about whether that's a good thing or not.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it looks like the way it's going. Let's talk about estates. I think that there's a movement going forward to shift more costs to the states on things like this. And I noticed in Massachusetts, we just actually had sort of a positive increase in the death tax avoidance thing. Can you just explain that a little bit?
Sure. In Massachusetts particularly, we have what's called an estate tax, which means when you pass away, the people who inherit your estate have to pay a tax if you fall within a certain guideline. In Massachusetts, it used to be that if you passed away with more than $1 million, you had to pay tax on that million back to zero. And if you had a spouse, they got $1 million, so that was $2 million, and that would go back. The problem in Massachusetts is that it wasn't portable, which means it didn't carry over. So if you passed away, your $1 million didn't go to your husband, so your husband or wife had $2 million, unless you did proper planning, which is what we would do, which is to set up a plan where you preserve the $1 million each. That was great. Massachusetts recently increased the estate tax level to $2 million per person. They didn't make it portable, which means it still doesn't carry over. So if you pass away with more than $2 million and it goes to your spouse, they're going to be limited to the $2 million. So you still have to do proper estate planning with your team. What they did do was eliminate what they call the cliff tax, which is where if you're $2,001, it goes back to zero. In Massachusetts now, it stops at $2 million. So the $1 would be taxed.
Yeah.
So it's a big change.
Okay. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a great thing, but you still need to do proper planning in order to preserve it, or you're going to still be caught with the $2 million limit rather than the $4 million limit, which you should have, considering houses in Massachusetts are half of it in the first place.
Yeah, right.
And everything counts. So.
Yeah. So what's interesting about that is with the current changes that are going on, I've been doing a lot of reading, especially the new book by Ray Dalio. For those of you that don't know, Ray Dalio is a very famous author and runs the third largest hedge fund, I think, in the world, Bridgewater Associates. He's got a couple of good books out. By the way, one of the greatest books, which is every father should give to his children, is called Principles. And it's a lot about, the ethics of being in business and all that stuff and the basic principles. He's the one who coined the phrase, "I never fired anybody too soon," and it's a great book. But his newest book is How Countries Go Broke, and it has a lot to do with this issue of taxes and collections and bills. So I'm a little concerned because this new bill that was recently passed seems like it's going to shift more costs to the states, which I think, again, Massachusetts is a pretty affluent state we're in now. The state where, I spent a lot of my other time in Colorado is pretty successful. But in the United States, there's quite a few states that will probably not be able to pay that extra burden of Medicaid shift. So I think there will be some increased state tax collections, to fund that sort of thing. So it's going to be interesting. The estate planning in Massachusetts has gotten better. We've done a lot of estate plans over the years. However, there are some super big changes that you and I have had to deal with, especially because we've been doing this for 20 years. And 10 years ago, little did we know, all of the planning that we did surrounding trusts and IRA accounts and retirement accounts that we thought was so sophisticated and wonderful is essentially all in the garbage can now, right?
No, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much, with the Secure Act changes. And by the way, so this is 2025. I'm fond of saying that, I started in '74 and sold out a large percentage of the practice to my associates, like 50 years later. And there was 47 tax changes in 50 years. Now I have to say there's 48 changes in 52 years because it is just a political football. And I think the one reason why we advocate a planning team, periodic reviews, I think if you have a plan that's 10 years old, you are probably, especially in Massachusetts, so far out of date now that some of the changes could actually hurt your family, especially like leaving your IRA to your trust fund. Yeah. I mean, it could be very, penalizing, right? Mm-hmm. So Lou, let's talk about a couple of other things. I think that one of the big stresses with kids and grandparenting is housing. We just had somebody in this morning. We were doing a podcast. We were talking to them. And they have greatly liberalized in this state the ADU rules, right? And it seems like we're doing a lot of joint family real estate, either purchases or additions. Is your firm involved in a lot of that?
Yeah, we would do that. It's coming in from two different directions, actually, because it's a real estate matter, and it's also a estate planning matter. It actually, the situation that you're talking about is becoming relevant in two ends. The seniors can't afford the care that they need going forward from that nursing home public point of view, so they need to make arrangements to have their family help. On the other hand, real estate's getting so expensive that it's hard for the kids to get into a home that they can buy, never mind one big enough to help the parents. And so we end up with these ADUs situations where you jointly pool your money. The parents pool some of their money to help the younger kids buy the house, and then make sure that they can add on to it some sort of a unit that they can live in and that they can have in-house support, because in-house support is coming through the government.
So in fact, in chapter 10, I think, or 9, in Great Parenting, because I've done about 10 of these around the country, but I have to say, and again, you're really tuned into this, I think the governor here in Massachusetts, I don't know who pushed it to liberalize the rules, but I mean, we might be the last ones to the party, I don't know, but it seems like there's no barriers now. I mean, I don't know, is it, because you're also involved, I know, in planning boards and governments.
Yeah, they took out the zoning rules, if you will, to keep towns from stopping them. It's just, at the state level, they basically said you can't do that. If it qualifies as an ADU, and there are rules, then you have to let it happen. You can't outlaw it because you don't allow it. And so that becomes very important.
So it's a big change. So by the way, ADU, we probably should have said this in the beginning, but it's called additional dwelling unit. And an additional dwelling unit can be, an apartment over the garage, in addition to the house, another little house on your property. I mean, there's a lot of different, in fact, in my little town of Bolton where I live, I know a builder, and they're building a number of these already, and it is just also part of our Sicilian heritage. I will tell you that in my second book on longevity, we did extensive amount of research on the blue zones and where people live the longest and where people have the greatest lives, and a lot of it has to do with living with family. And a lot of our traditional relatives. Yep. I mean, my grandma lived in the back bedroom. Right. I mean, we didn't call it an ADU then, but Giuseppina was back there, right?
Exactly.
Up at 4 a.m, making super high octane coffee, and when we would all walk home across the city from Catholic school, we'd go home for lunch and then go back, and Grandma would make. I mean, it was. And Lou's smiling over this because it's just such a funny Back to the Future moment, isn't it?
It is. Oh yeah.
And it is actually part of the reason why some people have greater longevity. It is not just financially efficient, which I agree with you.
Correct.
And it's not just a great estate planning play, which I agree with you. It is absolutely positively the socialization, the psychology of being around grandparents, super great for the little ones to be, exposed to the slightly smarter, wiser grandparents. Our kids get to realize sooner or later we might know a little bit more than they do, right? And it's a really positive thing, which is the reason why in Sardinia and in Nova Scotia and Okinawa and these places where people live a long time, they're living in a multi-generational cohabitated. But there are some rules, and I just wanted to hit this because you're super experienced with this, and I want to just encourage everybody to meet with and take the advice of your personal estate planning lawyer on this. If you're going to go into this area, this is a very complex area, and you need to have expert recommendation, not just in the zoning area that Lou is talking about for the zoning rules. You need to have experts sort of, construction advice, of course, if you're going to build onto it. And you really need expert legal and estate planning advice because how you own that property.
Oh, that's a big issue.
And how it's transferred. Now, I actually have a case where we did it in Virginia, and we built, in fact, it was 2 people from Massachusetts. The daughter sold the house, the parents sold the house, they bought a huge compound dwelling, right, just outside of D.C. The husband is a CIA guy, and we did a beautiful rehab of an old farmhouse on a great piece of property. However, we also arranged to endow the other daughter.
There you go. There's the issue.
That wasn't in the cohabitating situation, right? Mm-hmm. And that's pretty easy to do, right, Lou?
Sure.
I mean, this
proper documents.
Yep. I mean, estate equalization is one of those things, because you can't live with everybody. I mean, I guess that might happen in some families, but I mean,
I mean, in the ideal world, if you did one of these with a single child and you only had one child, and that would be easy. But especially in the Sicilian family, everybody wants to treat their kids equally.
Okay.
But you can't equally build an ADU in one kid's house.
Right.
You have to address it from the beginning. It's something you need to talk about as a family because there's going to be fights if you don't do it properly.
Yes, and we have...
There are many ways to do it.
And in addition to the experience that we've gotten working together on cases, I have to say, we could probably write a book on the great estate mistakes, and one of them, right here in Massachusetts, not very far, is a town called Somerville, Mass. And Somerville is a wonderful, blue-collar, hardworking group of people. Their home that they purchased when they came here in the 20s from other countries, Ireland, Italy, whatever, was like part of the American dream. They worked like crazy to buy these homes and get them paid for and not have a mortgage, which was just absolutely like toxic to my family. And my father, the greatest day in his life was to burn his mortgage, you know. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we had a case where a grandma in Somerville who really loved her children and really loved her grandchildren did not get what I would call really expert legal advice, and at the time that she passed away, there were 16 names on the house. Mm-hmm. Every child, every grandchild that came along, she would, out of the goodness of her heart, add their name to that house. Mm-hmm. And Lou, can you just sort of describe the situation it created and why the number one thing that you don't want to do is put your kid's name on your house?
Well, there's about 10 different reasons to not put your kids' name. First of all, your kids' debts go right to your house, number one, and you're also subjugating your kids to your debts by putting them on your house. That's number one. Number two, with that many kids, you run into issues with some of them were minors. So if, when you passed away and you wanted to sell, the minors needed to have somebody to be able to legally represent them. On the other hand, you give it to an older child who predeceases you, that's a probate. So you've got part of your ownership is in probate court, part of your ownership is getting a guardian for the child. You could almost not sell that house. Yeah. And the other part is the financial issue where your debts become theirs and their debts become yours. And that is just not the way to do it.
So I had to ask that question because the next question is going to be a little educational for everybody. But in the world that we live in, now we're in the state of Massachusetts. Lou practices in New England, and his daughter Andrea, who's just passed the bar, joined the firm, getting licensed in a bunch more states. But every state is different. And so we really want to encourage people that are watching this anywhere to keep in mind that this is a state-specific type of planning. So you have to plan around the rules of your particular state with an attorney that practices in that state and understands the rules of that state. But the other thing is that, we have had some clientele in New York and experienced a different type of process. And Lou, can you just explain the difference between law firms that do will-based plans and which is primarily like New York, and lawyers that do trust-based plans? Okay, can you just kind of generalize about that?
Well, a will-based plan basically sets you up to have to go to probate court because a will is not self-effective without a court order, basically. So if you say to a lawyer or a law firm, I need a will, and I own a piece of real estate, and they say, fine, we'll put your house in your name, and when you pass away, it'll go to the will, you're enlisting the services of probate court in order to wrap it up. Every state has a different probate rule. Every state has different probate processes. Some states are easier, so you tend to get more wills. Some states are more difficult, you get more trusts. Trusts, on the other hand, do not go to probate. They're managed by the trustee and then ultimately the alternate trustees, and they are effective immediately upon the passing. The alternate trustee can actually sell the house the next day and distribute the asset without involving the courts at all. That's important in states that have very complicated probate processes. So there is a big difference, and you have to know from state to state. So the other part about it is that if you have properties in more than one state, just Paul, I'm maybe anticipating Paul's next question, but if you have property,
This isn't the first time that Lou has stepped all over my presentation in a public meeting. We've done probably 1,000 public meetings together, and I never get a word in edgewise. But go ahead.
But the question is, what happens if you live in Massachusetts and have a house in Florida and a house in New Hampshire?
Or Colorado. Go ahead.
Or Colorado. So, if you do that, and they're in your own names, not only do you need one probate in the state that you passed away, let's say it's Massachusetts, you would need 4 probates. You'd need one for each state. Full probate, full fees, full time. And like in Florida, it's going to take you 90 days plus just to get going. And you have to pay the HOA fees, the taxes, and all of those things while you're doing that. So you do not want to own properties in any states, multiple states, without accounting for it in some sort of trust plan.
Okay, so sort of following on that topic, which is a very sensitive topic because, again, Lou and I have experienced a lot of clientele over the years that are pretty successful. We're very fortunate. I mean, I guess if there was wood around here, we would knock on it a little bit. I mean, we have had the great pleasure of working with a lot of, moderately successful families, and they have, a home at the beach or a home in the mountains, or a home, a couple of homes in different states, and it really tees up a really complex situation for death, but also tees one up for sickness. And Lou was involved with me during the era when my parents were aging out and had some very difficult situations and relating to not just their health, but also moving them from one state to another, which is a process you really never want to go through if you don't have to. Louis, can you just kind of explain like how the documents for sickness for aging population have evolved over the years, what they look like now?
Well, the two main ones for aging are healthcare proxy and a power of attorney, and the power of attorney becomes the most important thing with regards to being able to protect your asset base on all kinds of things, whether you're sick or you're disabled. The healthcare proxy, answering Paul's answer, is necessary because you can't move somebody from one state to another without having the proper legal authority to do it.
And if you don't have it, where do you go?
Probate court.
Probate court. Back
Exactly.
to probate court. Yeah. Okay. So
it's very simple to solve, but folks don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the big things, again, let me just say that, for people that are listening to this outside the state of Massachusetts, rules are very state-oriented, et cetera. However, there's a very specific question that we get all the time, and it happens because of our aging population, the fact we work in the estate planning business. People will say, well, we shouldn't have any trouble because I have a power of attorney. And we say, but your mom died. And the power of attorney dies with her.
Exactly.
Like they show up and they say they have a power of attorney for your mother. Yeah, but your mother's not with us anymore.
That's right.
So you need to understand certain documents do not survive the owner, but trusts do.
Trusts do.
I mean, I don't know the right English way to put that.
Trust is an independent, freestanding entity of its own with owners and trustees and beneficiaries, and properly drafted, the trustee may pass away, but the alternate trustee takes over. The beneficiary may pass away and the contingent or subsequent beneficiary steps in. So there's never a gap in management or ownership.
And that's all grisly talk, but since we're on the topic of trust, I want to talk about some fun stuff too. So let's talk about the fun of trust, because in I think my second or third chapter in one of the books, I say, like, what's wrong with the trust fund baby? I mean, I was fortunate enough to get, impacted by all this information young enough, and, formed a trust that put my daughter through college, a couple of them, and also she was put through college because her trust owned a piece of some real estate, that I was fortunate enough to develop and get some good advice and all that stuff. So we've created trust funds for babies,
Sure.
Trust funds for little babies,
Sure.
Lots of trust funds.
Yep.
And trusts are super good. And let's just explain, I think, why. I was at a 4th of July barbecue, and I'm sure if it's the Sorgi family, you probably had a huge family barbecue, right?
They're still there.
Yeah, they're still there. Yes, by the way, if you see pictures of a beautiful beach in Massachusetts with a family that's having a wonderful time, that's probably the Sorgi family at Gun Rock Beach.
There you go.
Right. Okay. So now that I outed them a little bit, but Louis, with teenagers, and we had a lot of teenagers at this event that I just went through. And in fact, I was just talking to my assistant, Kathy, about, teenagers and alcohol and, all kinds of things. There's all kinds of stuff that can happen, right? Tell me some of the great things, like if you're going to establish a trust fund for children or grandchildren, which, I know you love your grandchildren and you've done a lot of great planning and we've done it for other people's grandchildren. Let's just talk about some of the great reasons why you would want to enrich your children or grandchildren through a trust vehicle rather than just giving them a check for $100,000.
First of all, if you just give them a check for $100,000, you don't have control over it. You don't know where it goes. They can waste it on themselves, misspend it. And first of all, you have to do it while you're alive. If you set up a trust for your, let's say, grandchildren, you can give them that check, put it in the trust, and manage it after your passing by proper plans and proper rules inside the trust, when they can get it, how they can use it, who's going to manage it on their behalf, and by the way, protect it from themselves and protect it from creditors so that you can enrich them going forward with the same $100,000 check without worrying that they're going to go out and waste it on something. That's really the most important thing. The gift to the trust is the same as the gift to the kid. Yeah. So
we have had some real life experiences, and I was waiting for Lou to come around to this one because I like it so much, because there is like a 49% marriage dissolution rate in America, otherwise known as divorce. And when Lou says the word creditors, he's very, very oblique about this. He includes ex-spouses, by the way, and that an ex-spouse is a creditor. And so, and we've had a number of cases where, your young children might not have a successful first marriage or a successful first business or whatever, and all those things that could impact their financial life are eliminated with a properly drawn trust. Absolutely. So Lou, and I know you had a case or two, but you might want to just sort of talk about how, if you're going to enrich your children, especially as they get into maybe their married life, right, how money and trust can kind of help out.
Well, a couple of things. The first thing is, anybody who spent their entire life earning an asset base wants to make sure that it stays in their family. We call that bloodline, if you will. So if you simply set it up so that you're giving the money to your son outright and say, here, I die, you get $500,000. That automatically becomes a marital asset, which means that if something happens to their marriage, that $500,000 is going to, at least in part, even though inheritance technically is not part of a marital asset, it does become a marital asset in Massachusetts. It's hard to say it doesn't when it does, even though it's not supposed to. But if you put it into what we call a protective bloodline trust, you set it up so that it goes from your son to your son's kids, with somebody else managing it other than their mother or their father or vice versa, so that it's always for them. And you can do that only with a trust. You can't do it with a will, and you can't do it with a gift. You only do it with a trust, and it has to be properly drafted.
Yeah, and the other reason is because things happen, and again, some things you can predict and some you can't. We actually have had children in our network of people who have been perfectly healthy and wonderful and then had tragic accidents. We have one good friend whose son became a quad. I mean, we have like very good reasons why trusts are set up with people that have what we call either special circumstances, special needs, or special...
Well, that's another whole thing.
Another whole thing. And I do think that in those cases especially, like if you have a trust that's built to take care of a family member that might have some special circumstances, you can exclude them from being taken advantage of, by the way, which is a big thing. I mean, we see a lot of intentional bad behavior, but some of it's just plain unintentional. I mean, we've had widows who have been taken advantage of just out of loneliness or this or that, and the money they inherited from their deceased spouse, gone. And we've had some guys. We have one very famous case in our practice where a man lost his wife and was so despondent and really sad over a number of years that his entire estate was given away. Didn't have the supervision of his adult children who didn't want to be involved, and he had many sort of misadventures, which led to him losing the entire estate. So I do think trusts are very protective. Trusts are not punitive, trusts are protective. Trusts are good things, trusts are your friend, and you can have some fun with them. And as I said, we've had great fun setting up trusts for little tiny people. And yes, you can use them for education, but you can use them for starting a business and using them for a joint real estate venture. You can use them for a lot of really good things. Yep. And I think that my next question, which is going to be sort of a tee up for Lou to be a little bit, not to be politically correct, but you could, as we've seen, you could make a big mistake if you went online and tried to do one of these things yourself at some online legal service or something, but I'm sure Lou has an opinion about that because there's a lot of them now.
Sure. Well, there's two things wrong with that. Number one, that online service will never actually account for your personal needs and your personal likes and your personal goals. You'll get a state-specific boilerplate document that doesn't account for your individual needs. That's number one. Number two, when you do it, there's a piece missing. It goes back to what we talked about at the beginning. There's nobody to use it. You buy it online and nobody tells you what to do with it. So you end up with a boilerplate, Massachusetts, if you will, specific trust that's good for the general population that doesn't account for your specific needs and goals, and nobody to tell you how to put your bank account in it, or how to put your house in it, or how to not put your retirement fund in it. And you make a huge mistake because that online service doesn't have a financial advisor attached to it. And again, that gets back to the team approach. I have to say, I could tell you the funny canvas bag story if you want.
Do it. No, I knew you were going to go there. I love this story.
So we do these seminars where we ask everybody in the room how many people have an estate plan, and half the room raises their hand. Then we ask how many people have used it, and half the hands go down because they don't know. Then they come in to see us, and they bring in a canvas bag with their name etched on it, with a nice, perfect 3-ring binder on the inside, and perfectly photocopied documents, and they throw it on the table with the copy of the bill on top of it, and they paid an exorbitant amount of money. Then they hand us their bank statements and their real estate deed and their retirement funds and their investment account, and none of them are in the trust. They have no idea what to do with it, and nobody ever told them how to handle it. And they have to start from scratch. That doesn't mean the documents are bad. It's just nobody told them what to do with them. They overpaid for them, but that's beside the point. That canvas bag crowd, it's always the same.
Yeah, it is always the same. Also, I have to say the funniest story is Lou and I did some of these educational meetings recently, and then Lou was off doing some of his own stuff, and he was at the bank, and he's at the bank, where you go meet with somebody, at the little tables, not at the teller window, right? And he's got the divider thing, right? And the people don't tell you this, but you get this fancy trust document, and it's all like leather bound, and it's really expensive, and it's like baloney. You pay for it by the pound, And then you walk into your bank with it, and a lot of times, and this is very frequent, the bank doesn't know what to do with it.
Right.
In fact, Lou, you can just tell this story because I think this is hysterical.
Right. It actually is pretty funny. So I walked into the local bank, and I had my trust with me. Now, a lot of the customer service reps in banks either don't want to do it or don't know how to do it. So they say things that they probably shouldn't be saying. So I'm sitting at the counter with the divider, like Paul said, and I'm using my trust, and I'm talking to the manager, and we're putting a couple of accounts into our trust. It was a brand new setup. And on the other side of the divider, we hear, "Oh no, we don't do that." And the client said, "What do you mean you don't do that? I can't use my trust?" I've recognized the voice. So I leaned back around the corner, and it was one of my clients with my trust trying to do exactly the same thing I was doing in the next window over. And the bank supervisor stood up and said, "You need to do that. This is his lawyer. That's his trust, and of course we do this. And it was funnier actually being there than trying to tell the story. But it tells you that you need a team, because when you leave our little group, I always give you my cell phone number. And I always tell you, if you go to the bank, and Paul does the same thing, and they give you a pushback or they don't understand it, the first thing you do is call me and hand the phone to the person, and we take it from there. We short circuit 80% of the pushback.
Yeah, 90% of the time, I have to say, again, in all fairness, 90% of the time is not intentional.
That's correct.
I would say a lot of it is ignorance and maybe a lack of training in the bank's part. I have had actually drive to a bank, especially with elderly clients, because they do get pushed around a little bit and they get a little intimidated.
Yep.
And I had actually go to the bank with them and get a little harsh with the bank teller, manager, whoever it was, And so, I mean, that's just part of the process of putting together an estate plan, which is you create the documents, but until the financial documents and the legal documents and the real estate documents are locked together, all these three things that we're talking about, I mean, it's not just dating. I mean, they need to get married. I mean, and if they are all married together, it comes out really, really great. Okay, so let's wrap up a little bit with a couple of things that we've learned over the years. Lou, I mean, we've done a lot of estate plans. I mean, going back, of the sort of the top few things that we've learned, is there anything that you do differently today than you've done in the past? Were you originally just giving people legal documents and sending them on their way? What do you do differently now than when you were a young lawyer with a shiny new degree?
Well, what I do now is that I understand that other people need to be involved, and that you don't stand on an island by yourself and do a bunch of documents and hand them and say, thank you very much. I want to see them in practice, and it takes a team. I've learned that has become the biggest thing that I've learned in all the years I've been doing this. And that's not just in this area, it's in every area of our firm's practice. It's a team.
Yeah, I have to say the one thing, running a financial firm for all these years leads me to make certain recommendations, and we taught our people to make certain recommendations, and it's a very common thing. But I will tell you, it's like bubbles under a rug. And the number one thing that I have learned, and we're probably going to relearn it again shortly, is we would say to our clients, oh goodness, rates have come down, you should refinance your house. Little did I know, right? But I know it now, right? That if you say the rates are down and you have to refinance, probably the next phone call is going to be to your lawyer, because most of the refinance companies will look at a house that's owned in trust and they will throw their hands up and say, just like Lou's bank, oh, we can't do that.
Correct.
When actually, then they call Lou, and in some cases they take the house out of trust, they refinance it, they put it back in trust. But it's just one of those automatic things. Financial people, and it's the right recommendation. Financial people say, oh, interest rates are down from 6 to 5, refi your house.
Sure.
Right? And the next phone call you get is they say, oh, the bank won't do it.
Well, that's our team approach, even in our firm, because in that world, we have a group of lenders that we know that understand the world. And so when you send them over to them, and it's not just one, they know that they can use a trust, depending on the trust, and they know what to do. So rather than saying no, they say, let me see your trust. And then who did it? And then they will call and say, do you have these criteria, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Rather than having to go to the bank, some strange bank where they don't know it, and they tell you, no, we can't do that, take it out and go see a lawyer and come back see us.
And I also think, so one more little learning thing. So again, this type of planning has evolved. I mean, the reason that I actually, when I was talking to Amazon about this book project and all that, and the Amazon editor was really funny and said, just don't write 300 pages about money. It's too boring. Nobody's going to read it, whatever. So do 100 pages, which we did. I have to say that estate planning evolves. If you're a young person and you're in that wealth building mode, a lot of this is not very significant until 3 or 4 of the big events come along. And that's why I asked Lou about how his practice evolved. And in my recent interview I just did with a couple, I mean, this is how it goes. I mean, you really don't think a lot about this when you have a few bucks. I think it's the life events. Getting married, event number one, right? Babies come along, event number two. House gets purchased. Those are in the first 5 steps of wealth building. And that is the time that you need to get basic transportation. You need an estate plan that looks like a stripper Ford Falcon, with like a standard transmission. And then when you upgrade and you get into that what we call the X-Gen category, the 50 to 70-year-old person who's like building wealth. I mean, you really need to upgrade that plan, and it is literally like an upgrade. You need power windows, a moonroof, more sophisticated stuff, and then certainly and most certainly, when you get into the grandparenting mode, and as my old Sicilian father used to say, you never reach into your pocket to get the money until you see the toll booth coming up on you on the highway. The toll booth is coming for a lot of grandparents, and so it's the time to dive in and really get sophisticated about what is going to happen here. And that is relative to, what if grandma gets really sick? Right? Do we have the right documents? What if grandpa and grandpa both get sick? Or are they going to live in the back bedroom? Or are we going to build an ADU on our property out in Hingham or whatever? And I think this is the time for super creativity. And also, I just interviewed a woman who was the beneficiary of one of our grandparent education trusts I set up 20 years ago, and the grandparents passed away, and their trust that we did just paid for all the college loans for her kids and her daughter who's becoming a doctor, and it was just a really great conclusion to a long-term plan set up by grandparents. So I think, by the way, for those of you that think that we're all perfect, I mean, lawyers learn, financial advisors learn. This is actually a really big plug for not being someone's first estate planning client. I think that, like Lou's firm is really genuinely unique because they have really multi-generational attorneys, multi-discipline folks. I know my own daughter, Bianca, who's just kind of going through the whole process, house, marriage, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of pieces of this that are way beyond basics, and I think that it's important to have experience. When somebody writes a check for their legal fee, they're paying a little bit for the paper and ink, but 90% of the fee is for the experience. That's really what you're paying for. So I want to thank Lou for coming along, and I want to thank Anna Sorgi in absentia for being the backbone behind Lou and Anna. And for those of you that follow us on Facebook and Twitter and social media, you'll see that in almost every picture on every event, whether it's a cruise or our 50th anniversary or whatever, right, it's Lou and Anna, but everyone's surrounding Anna, which is the big joke because she is the funniest in the family, and she is the backbone and a great wife, lawyer, and partner to Lou over the years, which has kept him going. So I'm Paul Morrow. I'll see you again next time on Smart Financial Lifestyles.